So there's a lot more to learn from this, but I think at this point, maybe we're starting to get the point. The point is simply that we're living on a vulnerable planet. We're seeing a planet now that when we look out into space, we see that there's a hell of a lot more stuff out there in the near-Earth space region than anybody had imagined even a few decades ago. We're also finding out that the history of life on this planet is regularly punctuated by the gigantic catastrophic events. We're also finding out that the entire planetary surface is pockmarked with scars of huge numbers of impacts. We're also discovering that there is evidence that there could be multiple Tunguska type events. Important point. The objects that, the iron objects, like that created the crater in Arizona, relative to lighter density Tunguska type objects, the lighter density Tunguska objects are far more prevalent, maybe 10 times more. For every one object then, say that's below
Okay, but let me make
500
them.
or 1,000 feet in diameter, there might be 5 to 10 objects of the Tunguska mass, or Tunguska mass and density. So you see what I'm getting at here? There could be a far greater danger of Tunguska type events than anybody has appreciated. And why they're not looking at this, I don't know, but I'm guessing that the B12 Society is probably looking at it. I know a lot of members of the Comet Research Team are looking at it. I know George Howard is looking at it, who we've had on the show, and realizing, you know what, we really are far more vulnerable. And then the final thing is we're seeing in the evolution of human civilization on Earth is also punctuated by these repeated interruptions. Well, what's causing those? That brings us back to the question of extrinsic or intrinsic forces. A lot of evidence is pointing towards extrinsic forces being the ultimate trigger. Now, something happens from the outside that destabilizes society, yes, then there may be an intrinsic reaction or consequence to that, because it may trigger a destabilization that doesn't immediately drop the hammer on the civilization. It may be a destabilization that takes a generation, 2 or 3 to even recover from, if it does at all, you see? So the problem here is that the vast majority of humans on this planet are oblivious to the bigger world that we're a part of. That's the problem. Mainstream media is not helping, because what we've got here is hardcore evidence, and we're just barely touching upon the surface of this type of evidence. But what's everybody worried about? Look at the stuff people are worried about. Oh, we're all doomed because of a minuscule increase in carbon dioxide from 300 to 400 parts per million. That ain't much, folks. Is that really going to trigger catastrophic global warming? And that is a very fair question to ask. Now, is there consequences from an increase of 1 molecule of carbon dioxide for every 10,000 molecules of air? Yeah. Is it catastrophic? I think to be skeptical of that is a certainly legitimate stance to take. And when you begin to look at it, you go, there is a downside. But also there's an upside, because a little bit of extra carbon dioxide, as we now know, is fueling plant growth worldwide. It's literally causing a greening of the planet. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at some of the evidence and the satellite surveys and stuff that have led to that conclusion.